Hi, I'm Stephen Orr, and I'm out in the test garden today to talk about one of my favorite shrubs, lilacs. Not only do they come in a great selection of colors, much more than you might think, but also they have this amazing smell that immediately transports anyone back to being with their grandma in the garden and being outside in springtime. And that's why we love them. First, let's talk about the different types of lilacs. There's probably a lot more than you think as far as varieties go, but most of them come from one common species, which is called Syringa Vulgaris. And Syringa Vulgaris is the common lilac which most hybrids come from in the 19th century. And the French hybridizers made a huge range of colors ranging from the common lilac color, more pinky varieties, magentas, deep purples, bluish purples. Everything's kind of a purple variety except for the white lilacs, which are quite common as well. Some lilacs which are kind of a primrose yellow and also a peachy color. One of my other favorites is Sensation, which is this really great bicolor that has a purple flower edged in white. And it was discovered by accident in the 1930s, and no one's really been able to replicate that bicolor effect as far as I know. And it's a great one to look out for, and it's also quite fragrant. Some of the other lilac types you might want to experiment with. If you want to have more lilacs in your garden for a longer period of time, try a Korean lilac. It has a much smaller flower and a smaller leaf. The scent of the flower is a little different. It's a little muskier than a normal lilac smell. In my mind, the smell's not quite as nice, but also you do have a longer period of blooming in the garden, and they look great as landscape plants. You can also try a tree lilac, which is quite tall, has a different kind of a flower structure as well. Or you can use some of the new Bloomerang series of lilacs, where the hybridizers are pulling in different species that will extend the bloom time for many more weeks. So what's the best way to care for a lilac? Lilacs are super easy to grow, one of the easiest shrubs. In fact, they almost thrive on neglect. Lilacs live to be about 100 years old, and in fact, if you've been driving around in the countryside sometime and you'll see a lilac or two kind of by itself in a field, that usually means there used to be an old farmhouse there. That shows you how easy they are to grow. They like full sun, they like well-drained soil, and when you plant your lilac, just make sure it's in that kind of a situation. A lot of people are confused about pruning lilacs. In fact, most people are afraid to prune their shrubs because they're afraid they're going to cut off the flowers. The only way you're going to cut off the flowers of your lilacs is if you don't prune at the right time. So be sure you prune your lilacs right after they bloom. They bloom on old wood. So that said, you don't want to have very old wood on your lilacs either, because old wood starts to not bloom as much over the years and the flowers tend to get smaller and smaller. Let's say at your house you have a nice big lilac bush and you notice that the flowers are kind of petering out. Now's the time to do what I call rejuvenation of your lilac shrub. One way to do it is just cut it down to 6 or 8 inches. You're going to sacrifice a couple of years of bloom, but it will come back stronger than ever. Or you can do a relay pruning where you cut to the base, maybe 1/3 of the canes all the way down, almost to 6 inches, leave the others taller, so you have some flowers at eye level for those subsequent years while the other canes grow up and fill in. As far as pests and diseases go, lilacs are really easy. Powdery mildew will show up if the weather is really wet. If you're overwatering, you really shouldn't overwater your lilacs. They can take some dryness once they're established. Also, if the air circulation around the plant isn't good, so make sure they don't have a lot of other things around them. If the plant itself seems to be kind of congested, you can go in and cut out some branches to improve that air circulation. And as far as pests go, they don't have a lot of different insect problems, but deer will eat lilacs in certain situations. So where do lilacs grow best? Lilacs grow best where the winters are quite cold. They do really well even up in Canada. They're very, very hardy. They can take very negative temperatures in the winter. It does help set their buds to have the cold weather. That means they don't do great in the deep south where there's not a cold winter, or on the west coast where the winters are much milder. In those places, you can experiment with, say, a Korean lilac and you'll have more luck. So that's pretty much it for lilacs. They're super easy to grow. They smell great. They live for 100 years. Plant a lilac today. Your kids and your grandkids will thank you.